Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the next episode in my ongoing review series of possibly Was It Good? But this may actually evolve into its own distinct series, because I've noticed that there's, one kind of branch of entertainment that I really haven't talked about. I've talked about comics, movies, music, etc., but I haven't really talked about, writing and literary works. And being the avid reader that I am, it does seem to be a bit of a crime, does it not? So let's go ahead and start off this proposed new series with quite possibly my favorite series of books of all time. That's kind of debatable, but I don't know. I've read this series so many times, and every time it's just a joy for me. There's an old legend that Christopher Lee would reread the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy once a year for his entire life. I don't see reason not to believe that, because with this series of books, I kind of do the same thing. And let's just stop all the procrastination and get right on to it. Which books am I talking about? I'm talking about the Hyperion books, basically the Hyperion four-parter series, written by Dan Simmons.
Wow! What do you know?
Dan Simmons is one of my favorite authors for a couple different reasons. It's so funny because he's such a wordsmith, and and conversation comes very natural. Natural sounding dialogue comes very naturally to him. And so one of the things I really like about him, before I get into the book, is the fact that he will build in base crudity into these upper echelon things. For instance, you can have a guy reading or quoting Proust and Shakespeare, right? And they'll be talking about, this is from another book, by the way, talking about sonnets or whatever. Then they'll just lapse into some street crudity every now and then. It really gives them that human touch, even when the characters aren't human, but more on that later. So it's this great dynamic, and I think his mind for sci-fi is basically unmatched. It's most of his books are pretty deep, at least ones having to do with sci-fi, into the sci-fi realm.
What the hell kind of an analogy is that?
Which for me is a great thing. Some people may not care for it, but I appreciate the effort that goes through. So the Hyperion series is basically 4 books, starting with Hyperion, aptly named, moving on to the Fall of Hyperion. It's basically, these 2 books are basically their own story, and then the last 2 books of the series, Endymion and Rise of Endymion. Notice the change here, Rise and Fall. These are basically their own story, but it's set in the same universe, just a couple hundred years later. So I'm not going to talk about all 4 of these. I'm just going to talk about the first book right now, because believe me, if I made a video talking about the things that I like about the whole series, it'd be over an hour and a half long easily. So let's just talk about Hyperion, the one that started it all. And for all intents and purposes, this is my favorite book in the series. I'm going to paraphrase this very much, and let's just give you the super Cliff Notes version. This book, for those who haven't read it, is basically a sci-fi version of Lord of the Rings, but with a twist. Imagine, instead of taking the ring to Mount Doom to destroy it, as in Lord of the Rings, your whole quest was to go meet Sauron himself, and then demand something of him.
Why, that's brilliant. That's a lot better than what I'd come up with.
Knowing that the rest of your group was going to probably die, and only one person would survive. I mean, that's a really basic way of looking at this, and probably oversimplified, but that's kind of what I see. But the interesting thing about this book to me is the quest itself is almost irrelevant. Just my opinion. That's not what makes this book good to me. What makes this book good to me is how each and every person on said quest is fully realized and is a fully fleshed out, I can see them in my mind person. A lot of books and that are written well, even, don't always elicit an inner visual of the characters, but I can see every character in this book clear in my mind, clear as day, and that's just a testament to breathing actual life into them. This book, of course, sets up the events in the Fall of Hyperion, but in doing so, it's done in an almost episodic way.
Example.
each member of this quest that they're going on to has, I don't even want to say chapters, but I mean, each part of their story fits in completely to this jigsaw puzzle that is this overarching quest, right? And in ways they don't even know about when they first get started, but they're all incredibly detailed. Let's just start off with some characters first. You got, by the way, I'm gonna try not to do any spoilers here. I definitely encourage you to go read the book for yourself, so this is not ruined for you, but I'll just give you some overall gist of the characters and kind of what they're all about, and once again, what I find so fascinating about them. Cast of characters is pretty varied. Hopefully I get all their names right. I haven't read this in several months, so sometimes names get a little fuzzy, but you have Lenar Hoyt. He's a priest in constant pain, and we find out later because of his ties with a former priest, Paul Dure, who disappeared on the world of Hyperion many ages ago. Well, not ages ago, but many years before this. You have Het Mastine. He's the one that pilots the basically tree ship, the Yargestrill. I'm probably pronouncing that really wrong. It's from the old a Nordic tradition of the tree of the cosmos or whatever. But he's a member of the Templars. The Templars are basically stewards of the ecology on their planet. They kind of their god is basically Muir, in other words, but. But they've learned to harness these naturally occurring force fields, allow them to fly actual trees through space. That ties in much more with the later books in the series as well, the Endymion books. But anyway, he's the one getting them to where they're going. You got Braun Lamia. I'm going to say Lamia probably is how it's pronounced, but I always think of the Greek serpent ladies or whatever, underground, the undead ones. She's on a quest basically to, I don't know if it's so much to reclaim her lost love, but to find the ones that killed him. Her lost love is actually a human Technocore hybrid. Technocore are basically the ones who give all the technology and instantaneous travel to the humans in this story, right? It's a huge web. Once I can't get into it completely, lest I ruin the story, and also it's just too much to go over in a short video. But she lost her love. She's a private investigator on the world of Lucis, and she's also the daughter of an influential senator who had been killed off by the Technocore. Technocore are kind of the boogeyman, they're alluded to as basically spiders in the web throughout the series. So that's her, and she's also pregnant with said lover's child, furthering her cause. But she carries the memories of her lover in a neural shunt. But once again, it gets on there. Saul Weintraub. He is kind of the, and it's actually alluded to directly in the books, the Abrahamic character in the book here, asked to give up Isaac as a burnt offering, but basically his Isaac is his daughter, Rachel, and she's been cursed with Merlin sickness due to her investigating the time tombs. More on that later. And I'm not going to tell you what the sickness is because it's very interesting, but basically it's a terminal disease that she has to get fixed, and so that was his reason for going on the quest. He is basically a minor scholar on a backworld planet in the web here. The web is all the planets that are part of the hegemony. Like I said, it's an interstellar not really in colonization, but just an interstellar complete race, and I don't know how the best way to explain this.
Say it. Say it.
All of humankind is out there in the stars, let's just say that, on different colonial worlds. But each world is realized separately. Anyway, long story short, they can travel instantaneously between them, and they can also use FTL transit to get between the planets as well. But anyway, he's a scholar, spent his whole life sheltered in a small college in a kind of agricultural planet. But yeah, he's taken upon in his elder years to deliver his child to the said boogeyman here, which is the Shrike. You might see him. Not you might see him. You see him on the cover of the book itself, somewhat realized here, in order to try to fix it. You got Fedman Kassad. He's the soldier. He's the warrior that was thrown away after saving basically a planet and its ruling government. He was the Oliver North of his time, right? He was the scapegoat. But he's kind of a brutal man, but he's in search of basically his dream lover that he's only met on battlefields, and it's leading him towards the Shrike, and he winds up being on this quest. There's more to it, but just once again, cliff notes here. Who else am I forgetting? Martin Salanis. Now, Salanis is a very fascinating character and probably my favorite of this group. He is the poet, and he is a lost Earth poet. Basically, the Earth is destroyed at this time, and he was actually a resident on it. He's probably the oldest living human being in existence. He got that way not by providence, but by accident, and he's a poet. He became a billionaire poet, lost it all, joined another community that was nothing but a Renaissance place for artists, and wound up becoming enraptured with this poem that he's writing. It seems to tie in somehow with the Shrike, and basically in doing so, he gets everyone around him killed. And so he's convinced that this poem itself that he's writing, the Cantos, is vital to the workings of the entire galaxy, perhaps? I don't know. But he's basically going to finish his story, because the only time he can write it is when he's around this Shrike creature. So it's a really strange symbiosis here. But he's a very, very vulgar man, highly intelligent and abrasive. So he's definitely like the humanist, if you will, of the group, and he's very, very believable. And I didn't really talk about Paul Dury. Paul Dury was a priest that wanted to visit this remote tribe on the world of Hyperion, and in doing so, he did this because he was basically exiled from the dwindling Catholic Church. There's very few Catholics left in this new era, right? And he's more like excommunicated from the church. But basically, he was stuck in a backwater world, so no one hear from him anymore because he forged a little bit of data. He's an archaeologist by trade, but he forged some data to try to promote his cause, and he was caught up in it. So he goes to study this complete backwater tribe, and in doing so, comes across something that plays out in much greater detail later on in the series, but basically it damns him and dooms him. But that's his story. A lot of his story is this trek out to meet the tribe, and once he does and learns their secret and becomes part of the secret, unfortunately for him, that's where it leads him. He plays a very important role, of course, throughout the story, and all these characters do, especially after these books, or after this book. We're down to, just the consul left. The consul was never named, but he was basically a governor general of a world, Hyperion. All roads lead back to Hyperion in this book. His story is basically, he's the one narrating basically everyone. So, he's a storyteller for us in a way. He's a man racked with guilt because he's basically Judas. He's a betrayer of not only the hegemony, but also the ousters. The ousters are the kind of bad guys in this first book, much more so than the Strike. They are, kind of, like I said, they're the creatures that people tell their children about to scare them, right? If you're not good, the ousters will come and get you. What the ousters really are is humans who did not colonize on these planets and kept going into space and stayed there, and then began augmenting themselves with nanotechnology and various other things, gene splicings and such. And so they're human, but they become something other than human. But so they're kind of the boogeyman. There's like two different sets of boogeymen in this first book. But so the consul has actually had dealings with them as well and winds up betraying them, all because he is basically the last son of a planet who was taken over by the hegemony, Maui Covenant. Maui Covenant was like an ocean world, very ecologically sound and all that, and had a small population, and then it was basically taken over by the hegemony. They came in and turned it to basically a tourist planet. And his mother was destroyed because of it, and so was his father. So it's I don't know what I would call him as far as a literary figure, but he's basically the narrator of this. So his story is basically told last, and that's when we start finding out the secrets about them. But So this whole group has to make this pilgrimage, not only through space and time, traveling between the stars on a ship instead of instantaneously. Once they hit the planet, they actually have to make their way slowly to the place where the Shrike lives, the time tombs, right, to make their plea. And so, we follow them along the way. In the meantime, we have some other things working against them, but basically the whole meat of this first book is just telling their stories and getting to know them. So, there's not I'm not going to tell you an ending here. Let's just say there's more conclusions to be had, but you need to keep reading on. But yeah, this book is just so amazingly good, I think, at painting the picture of this group of people. This is not like the happiest group together. They don't all want to be there. In fact, they're all pretty miserable. Circumstances that led them there have not been good. So we have priest Lenar Hoyt. He's in constant pain. We find out later why. So Bronlamia lost her lover. Saul Weintrop's daughter is dying very slowly and in a very, very cruel way. Martin Salanis is kind of a sadist in a way. He's willing to sacrifice anybody just so he can finish his cantos. But he's kind of pained too by the destruction he's wrought, even if he didn't know it was him at the time. Fedman Kassad is, the disgraced ex-soldier. He's lost everything, and now he's on a desperate search to find his lover, who kind of betrayed him somewhat, but we find out more about that later. So it's just like, it's not a happy group of people, and they're thrown together because they have to be. But I don't know, it's just all their stories are so fascinating, and they really make you think about it. Like for instance, when Dure, his fate, I actually went back and reread the chapter again because it was so, I couldn't believe it when he did it. It was very, I don't know, not that it was so unbelievable, but it's just like, did I read that right? Did this man really do that to himself? And that's the kind of strength he had in character. But yeah, it's just so rich. The tapestry of the hegemony is so rich to go along with their stories. This is a completely advanced society, several hundred years in our future. Everything is instantly at your fingertips. You have bioprocessing circuits installed in your brain. So most people nowadays can't even read. They don't need to read anymore because they have their implants do it for them. They can travel almost instantaneously between planets. They don't know how it works because the Technocore gave it to them. But yeah, they can, 1 second be on one world and 1 second be on another world. Faster than light travel, Hawking speed basically, is kind of a relativistic speed, but it's, in a space of months, you can travel between worlds, which would otherwise take years at normal speeds, right? Or even or centuries, excuse me. But there's a time debt involved in it. The book goes through that. So just because you're traveling that fast doesn't mean the rest of the universe is. So, while only be a month of travel for you, it could be, 8 or 9 years for your destination of where you're going. So very cool stuff there. But yeah, it's extremely technologically advanced. And there's actually another plot going on here too with Mina Gladstone. And I can see her in my mind very well too. She's the leader basically of the hegemony. And, but it's set up very much like a presidency here. But so she has her problems with the Technocore and her questions about it and why are they helping humanity and why are they holding humanity back in some ways. So you have that aspect. You have the aspect of the Technocore, which basically, once again, is the supplier of all those pretty precious little doodads that humans have become completely dependent upon. And what is their purpose? What is their gain out of all this? So it's not just a story about the main characters. There's definitely a very rich tapestry drawn here of this universe that they live in. And then you have the enigmatic Shrike. What is the Shrike? Every time I remember when I first heard this, because we actually have these birds back home, but the Shrike is actually also colloquially named the butcher bird. The Shrike bird will take insects, and if you live around a place with barbed wire, sometimes you'll see insects, at least down in Florida. You'll see insects impaled upon the little spikes. That's the Shrike bird. That's what they do. They catch insects, they impale them, and they come back and eat them later. So they normally do that on thorn trees, but they've become used to people, and they've learned to use the barbed wire fences. So fascinating stuff, and that's kind of what the Shrike does in legend in the book. He pins people to this tree of torment, tree of atonement. Some people call it tree of pain. Others call it, and they have to ride there for basically all eternity in constant pain. So just fascinating, like, allegory there. I don't know, but he's very enigmatic. We don't know what he is. Is he a robot? Is he just a demon? What is this? Is he malevolent at all? We don't know. He's always seen around carnage and everything, but we don't know anything about his motivations or what he stands for or what his goal is. You have the time tombs. This is a set of tombs where he lives that appears to be moving backwards in time. Why is this? What's it for? People think, of course, it's from the future, but what's it going to do? Is stuff going to be like showing up in these areas? You have something that's introduced called the labyrinths. On 9 worlds, there's these huge hundreds and hundreds of mile, like perfectly cut labyrinths underneath the surface of planets. There's nothing in them. No one knows why they're there, but they're talked about in the book a little bit. Kind of reminds me of, what was it, the Queen's Walkway or whatever, and the Great Pyramid. You know, people still don't know how they were made because they're all so perfectly etched and lined up. But anyway, that's a tale for another day. But yeah, it's just that this story is just so incredibly vibrant, and some people might have a problem with the length. Let's see, I got the paperback version, and yeah, 482 pages, and the books only get bigger from there, like I said. So it's not the smallest series in the world, but I'll tell you what, these books fly by. This is I tried reading, like, for instance, Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time series, and those books are just big, and they're kind of a chore to get through sometimes. But these, I can't wait to put them down so I can pick them right back up again. You know, this is that weird dichotomy there. I don't know what it is.
Well, I'm not going to think. Why should I start now?
It's just a towering achievement of books, and other than, like, say, John D. McDonald's Travis McGee series, this is probably the series I go back to the most often. And it's not a lot of books that I reread on a regular basis, and this is definitely a series I do. So I highly recommend the series, but I especially highly recommend the very first book. Check it out. Let me know what you think. If you read this before, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on it. But yeah, just an incredible series. And he also has another set of books that are really fun too. The Alien books. It's a 2-parter. Once again, not the smallest of tomes, but man, what a read they are. Yeah, give them a try. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on it in series. Just amazing sci-fi, but this is just not sci-fi. Just because in a sci-fi setting doesn't make it, you know, a sci-fi schlock story. This is a story about people, and these people are, like I said, fully realized, fully fleshed out, and in most cases, fully human. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. That got a little longer than I wanted it to be, but check out the book. Let me know what you think. And yeah, that's it for now. So hey, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more review content coming up in the near future, because as you all know, if I can review it, I will do it. Check out the book. Make sure to read a book, you know, all the time. Stay literary, people. Stay literary. Until next time, this is Genome. Just hoping the strike doesn't put him on barbed wire.